Mike's up. We're ready. Left to me. Smooth 98.1, love music, love life. Welcome to Lagos Talks 981 on the smoothest dial on Lagos Radio. On this segment of the show, we're going to be talking about the 2021 Nigerian Economy Review, and we want you, Lagos, to be a part of our conversation. But joining us in this talk today, we have the heavy hitters, I dare say. We have a couple of analysts that's what we talk to on our Freshly Pressed 981. And first, let's start off with the first person here. Justin EJ, he's a financial planner and also the CEO at Platform Consolidated Investments. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning, people.
And also, we have in the studio Ugo Dre. He's the founder, Nairametrics Financial Advocates. Good morning, Ugo Dre.
Morning, good to see you.
Also, we have with us in the studio this morning Devo Corey. You just heard him a few minutes ago on Freshly Pressed. He's a communications professional. Good morning, Devo.
Morning, Lagos, a cool economy.
And finally, we have Mr. C with us in the studio. He's a legal practitioner. Good morning, Mr. C.
Good morning, Kaide. Good morning, Lakumi. Good morning, Ugo Trey. Good morning, Justin. Good morning, Devo. Good morning, Lagos.
Merry Christmas to you and everybody in your house.
That's
Yes,
right.
thank you. Remember that you can join the conversation. We're streaming live on YouTube, so you can get your questions or your comments in from YouTube as well. You can send us a message on WhatsApp. It is 0809 0981. What we're looking to do is quickly, with the time we have,
Yeah.
to get into some of the things that happen in the year and to see where we're going from these things, right? Economy, insecurity, medical system, power, food. We're looking at all that. Heidi.
Yeah, so let's start with the first one. We'll start off with Ugo Dre. So the National Bureau of Statistics, they've said that the Composite Food Index rose by 17.21% in November 2021 as compared to 18.30% in November 2020. It goes on and on, but real quick, I'd like to ask you this. A number of factors contribute to this increase. So what would you attribute to the increase? And also, how do we take advantage of the decline in inflation?
You just mixed up two things, but I'll try and explain that.
Yes.
So it's been a very tough year for Nigerians, inflation-wise. I think at some point in March 2021, we hit another high, or year high, 18.17% inflation rate. And from then on, we started to see a decline, which economists call basic driven decline. Just put into context, inflation rate means price of goods and services are rising.
Okay.
So when they say decline, it just means that it's rising slower than in previous periods. Right? So if you lose 18% the month before, then this month is 17%.
Okay.
It's a decline compared to the month before, but it still means that price of goods and services are rising. And so why did this happen this year? A lot of factors. The first one would be COVID-19. COVID was a major factor, and that's because of some of the supply chain issues that it caused globally, not just in Nigeria. People couldn't move products around the world, or logistics issues. I think there's sometime early this year where we had ship blockages, was it the Suez Canal and things like that. So there were so many issues this year that COVID-19 also triggered. In addition to that, we also had security issues.
Okay.
Security issues meaning that Nigerians couldn't move food across the country. Things were going up, and there were a lot of wastages here and there. When they raise funds, that's finally recovering, so they tend to increase
The prices.
as well. So that was also a positive factor. Another major factor was the exchange rate. Before our own very eyes, we saw the naira go from about 480 or thereabouts to 570 this year. I think this life goes on, and that's the black market. And for a lot of people, the black market still represents their own input cost per exchange rate, and that basically reflected a lot of the prices that was. And there was in price increases in gas, diesel,
Price increase in everything.
oil, power. So yeah, general price increases, and that's what we're seeing now. Going into 2022, perhaps the decline would continue. Decline is continuing just because the prices are not going to increase at the same pace that it did this year. But there are a number of things that could trigger it. And I guess as we go on in the conversation, we'll talk about that. But generally, this has been the inflation review for Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much for that.
All right, Justin, you're already aware that Nigeria's foreign trade grew 10.43%
It's
this
not that way.
year. That's actually according to MBS report, so you're aware, I know. Nigeria trade balance had a deficit of about 3 billion naira. Let's get into the question, how can this be brought back to at least a point of balance in terms of the growth of our economy, starting from government policies down to what citizens can do to sustain the economy.
Fantastic. So we talked about this some weeks ago on Freshly Pressed, something related. Balance of trade, again, to simplify for our listeners, you need to produce more than you consume if you want to achieve equilibrium. So your question is, how do we bring this to a point of balance? My perspective is we don't necessarily need to achieve equilibrium because a deficit can be good,
Okay.
right? A deficit can be good if you properly leverage in deficit. Just the same way that debt can be good, credit can be good, borrowing can be good. It depends on what you're borrowing to finance. Do you understand? So if I am going to create a budget deficit because I want to finance growth, I want to finance capex, not to finance salaries. I'm not creating a budget deficit to finance a payment of salaries and all of that. Then it makes sense. So I'm not necessarily an advocate for an equilibrium. The point is, if we're in deficit, why are we in deficit? And what are we doing? How are we leveraging it? To the point, what can citizens do to sustain the economy? How do we slow the rate of imports? We virtually import everything, right? Now, this speaks to how the productive sector of the economy is structured. We must create policies, we must create an environment that allows the private sector to produce the things that the everyday Nigerian will consume. That way, we are not spending import dollars on everything, therefore creating a situation where we're spending more money than we are literally earning, foreign exchange wise. Okay, so government policies, this speaks to basically everything. We need to fix the things that we complain about every day. For you to industrialize, you need power. We need to fix the power sector. We need to look at the Land Use Act. If we say agriculture is where we're anchoring the hopes for the future on, the Land Use Act is a big albatross in that sector. We need to fix that, and then we need to fix. Ugodre talked about certain things that even refer to that. Things about wastage in the agri sector, logistics of moving food. There's a lot of wastage, even for the things that we produce. Get from farm to market, there's a lot of waste. There's a lot of lack of capacity in the secondary spaces in the agri value chain, all right? So processing, apart from the raw food materials, processing. So we end up importing things like sugar, we're importing things like fish, we're importing things like chicken. All of that is money out of our pockets, and it feeds into the import, into the trade deficits that we have. Citizens on an everyday level really buy more local as much as is possible. We used to talk about import substitution, right? What can you buy the local version of that meets your need? Again, I'm not a sofa advocate. If the local version of whatever it is doesn't meet the need or is substandard, I'm not going to say go and get local, but as much as possible buy local. Fashion, the things that we wear, right? Kaide, you're on that.
This is local.
Yes.
Yes.
So well
Okay.
done.
So we should come down. Everything should
Yeah.
be produced here.
I can see you wearing Ralph.
Lakumi, can you move to the next?
All right.
Next one
Speaking,
comes to
yeah.
Ugodre, but real quick though, if you're wondering what we're doing here, it's the 2021 Nigerian Economy Review, and we have Justin Iche Ugodre, Deborah Corey, and Mr. C right here in the studio with us, and you're welcome to be a part of our conversation. We're going to
Yes.
we're going to take messages in a short bit, but please don't forget to send them to 0809 444 0981. Now, Ugodre, this one comes to you. There were a number of CBN policies this year,
yeah.
right? And there's been a lot of talk about them. So, how do you think they have done in growing the economy? That's the first question. And also, what policy do you think needs to be reviewed for 2022?
Mr. C, these guys just want to put me on the spot.
You want to first knock out the economy questions?
Oh, where do I start from? I mean, this was a year of CBN policies. There's a WhatsApp group, I mean, and they say every day, what's that slogan again? I think every day is a CBN circle or something like that. There were a lot of CBN policies this year, from throwing away, for kicking out BDCs out of the market, to going after, any Apple KFX was just left for the stick of. There's just so many of them. Just in a bid to basically stable the naira. Do you guys also remember at some point this year when the CBN said, you know what, you can just have someone transfer money to you in dollars and then just go to the
Buy
bank
one,
and
get
withdraw
one
the dollar
free.
and then go and buy and then they give you 5 naira on top. And several policies just. And then there was also the e-naira as well that came with a lot of fanfare and all that towards the end of the year, and all towards
Still
ensuring
has its
that.
kicks though.
Sorry.
Still working on that. I mean, still has its
Yeah,
kicks. even
yeah.
on
I
the
mean,
practical
it has
level.
its plus sides. I mean, I kind of like it though. But anyway, so a lot of these policies were geared towards trying to make the exchange rate a bit more stable. We also saw a CBN that was very bullish about intervention funds. There were a lot of intervention funds in several sectors in the economy: agricultural, agric sector, power sector, industrials, several intervention funds. And one would have to give them credit for that though. Trillions of naira invested as part of this developmental initiative. So we saw a lot of that as well in 2021. And then we also saw a relatively flat monetary policy, I would say. So typically when the CBN meets every month, monthly policy meetings, you tend to hear things like, maybe they would increase interest rates or reduce interest rate depending on inflation coming on the swinging. But we didn't see any of that. I think for most parts of the year, monetary policy was basically flat. Rather, it was usually the drama behind the monetary policy meetings that kind of excited a lot.
But in your own opinion, though, what policy do you think needs to be reviewed for 2022?
Well, that's kind of like an unfair question because there are just several of them.
Where do you want to start?
be honest,
Okay,
so
let's
I don't
pick
know
out
where
the
to start.
three
But I
best
think,
ones.
if I was gonna, settle for a policy that I think would be most influential, it would have to be forex policy. I think that
Why should
it's kind of broken at the moment.
Can you say it again? They didn't hear you.
It's kind of broken at the moment. We do practice what we call a managed flow exchange rate system, but that's not what we're doing at the moment, right? So we have more like a fixed exchange rate system, and now there's not a lot of dollars, flowing in there. Even though we do see $3 or $4 billion every month or so at the high end, but that's just not enough. So I think we need to fix that first. So once that is fixed, you can then start to see foreign investor inflow back into the country, and then you can start to see a lot more stable exchange rate, which we need. Just like Justin said, it's not like we need a positive balance of trade, or we need a stronger naira per se, but you just need something that's stable, right?
Okay.
So that investors can plan. So that would be my own selection of what policies I want to.
All right, Ifeanyi says, what implications will this question for borrowing have on our economy? He goes at borrowing. I'm not sure I understand what Ifeanyi is saying.
He goes borrowing, goes soaring. Should we begin to sound the alarm bells?
Okay. All right, we're going to answer that question as soon as we get back from this. Remember that this is Lagos Talk Special. We're having a conversation on the year. We're basically reviewing the year 2021. We've come from talking about the economy, policies, food, and then we're going to move into power as soon as we get back from the break.
Okay.
That's all.
Yes, but the
Yes,
YouTube is still
Master.
live. The next question is yours, Mr. C.
Yes.
You can't do. Oh yeah, you can't. Okay.
17 months is enough to tell me security.
Yeah, that's what was in news yesterday.
Ashiri.
You don't think it's possible?
We've had how many? Okay, what we've been doing is practice. Yeah, miracle is going to happen in the next 17 months. I think it's not a question of capacity, it's a question of will.
We're getting in.
Yes.
If you're debating capacity, you're
I'll get it
backing
back.
up.
Valenzo, our great conversations on Smooth 98.1. We're back into Lagos Talks 981, and we are doing the year's review, the economy review 2021. I'm here with Kade Baker.
And Olakumi is here as well. And of course, we're joined by our very special guests, Justin EJ, Ugo Dre, Devon Corey, and Mr. C. We're going to give you the social media handles so you can follow them after the conversation. And, you can maybe continue that conversation on social media. Next question comes to Mr. C.
Yes, Mr. C, we mentioned that we're going to go straight into power. We already know that the power generation still overs just about 5,000 MW, that's megawatts, despite the 13,000 megawatts installed capacity 8 years after the sector was privatized. The nation has a goal of generating 30,000 megawatts by 2030, with 3,000 megawatts coming from renewables and 27,000 megawatts from its power plants to serve about 200 million, citizens. Mr. C, knowing that power is something that drives industrialization, what would you say is the biggest challenge of our power sector?
Okay, so thank you, Lakumi. But before I answer the question, let me quickly give a snapshot of the power sector industry in 2021.
Okay.
Now, in the year under review, Phase 1 of the National Mass Metering Program was completed and 980,000 power consumers received meters. Now, the next phase is scheduled to start under Phase 2 of the said program. 4 million meters are to be distributed free of charge to consumers. In the same year under review, 5 generating companies were scheduled for privatization. Of course, the Electricity Workers Union kicked up a fuss and said that they wouldn't be supporting the move unless the government ensured that the right investors who had both the financial and technical competence were allowed to buy the firms. Sometime during the year, the former Minister for Power was sacked by the President and was replaced with a new minister. Then we also had a series of power tariff increases, but there was no corresponding increase in power supply. We then had a disturbing number of complete system collapses from the National Grid Center in Oshobo, Osun State. And during that period, total power generation was zero. Finally, we had a suggestion from the World Bank suggesting that, amongst other things, Nigeria should consider removing totally the tariffs on power in 2022. So, to your question, what is the biggest challenge the power sector industry faces? I would say, to my mind, the biggest challenge it faces is funding. For a number of decades, actually, we have not properly funded the power sector industry, and as a result, we're faced and we're coupled with decrepit and aging infrastructure that cannot meet the needs of Nigeria's burgeoning and increasing population. From generation to transmission to distribution, all along the value supply chain, there is poor infrastructure in place, and the low tariffs, which are not cost reflective, deter investors from coming in, because the truth of the matter is Nigeria has a market. As at 2021, we're projected to hit $445 billion in GDP, gross domestic product. So clearly there's a market, but the investors are watching that. There's no point coming into a market, into a sector where the tariffs are not cost reflective, where they're not sure they'll get their money out. And tied to that is the problem with Forex. No investor wants to bring in money and is unable to take it out when he needs to. So we need, and a recent study suggested that we need a minimum of $10 billion invested every year for at least the next 15 to 20 years to even get to where, say, for example, South Africa is. Now, South Africa currently is generating about 40,000 megawatts publicly. It will interest our listeners to know that privately, from private generators and from independent power producers, we're generating the same amount.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Don't forget, guys, you can still send your messages. Send them to 0809-444-0991. We'll take them as quickly as possible, and we'll be heading into our next story now, which comes to you, Deborah. But first things first, though, can you before we jump into the next story, let me ask you this: what would your recommendations be concerning power? To the relativity of concerning power generally. What would your thoughts be?
Well, the truth is, it goes without saying, we've been on this issue for years without untold of the multiplier effect of power on practically everything in our economy. And you would want to know that why have we still struggled? Now, let me even put in context the Nigeria and the South Africa issue. Nigeria intends to produce 30,000 megawatts by 2030, okay, for a population of 200 million people, while South Africa is producing 58,000 megawatts for a population of about 50 million people. If we end this program on that point, I think it's enough for people to think and to have some sleepless nights as to our inability or
Let me
incapacity.
ask a basic layman question.
Yes.
So, if we're producing this little for so many people, and South Africa is producing so much for,
Fewer people.
what is the problem? We have,
Yes.
we can argue and say that we have infrastructure, we have, some things that can.
There are
meet these
myriad.
challenges.
It's a
What
mix.
would be the recommendation?
It's a
for us?
potpourri, and I'll just mention a few of them, which the Lagos Chamber of Commerce had mentioned. The issues of due diligence in the power sector reform, issues of technical capacity, issues of financial capacity, political interference, metering issues, commercial losses, technical losses, tariff rigidities, and back and forth, both on the supply side and on the demand side. So, my candid advice for um, the power sector minister. One of the issues that I think they're going to have to deal with, which is going to become one of the scary monsters in 2022, is the issue of the power tariff. Okay, at some point, Nigeria cannot afford subsidies in any ramification, either from the fuel issue, the pump price, or the electric tariff, which at the end of the day we literally need to pay more because we indirectly pay more by the independent power generation that we all have in our homes, and as well as the forex, that's the foreign exchange management plan. We can't carry these subsidies. At some point, we're going to have to shift this
Can I
Shift
correct
it to
number
the
this?
people
forward.
as opposed to.
Yeah.
Let me correct it, please.
Mm.
So tariffs today are actually less than 10% subsidized. There's
Mm.
been a lot of tariff increases that have happened this year already, so I think we're close to 9%. So,
Oh, close to
yeah,
90%.
yeah,
Okay.
in terms of tariff subsidies.
Okay, fine.
This year it's probably going to be like 100%.
Okay. So I guess we shouldn't really be afraid for next year. That means they can't go out too much.
It looks promising for
However,
2026.
the power minister is literally in the hands of the executive, in the sense that if there's executive willingness to actually review some of the reforms that have taken place in all the sections, from the generation, even though they intend to sell like five, to the transmission, the executive willingness to see that privatization of the transmission aspect of the power sector, it may at the end of the day translate to a better experience for all of us who experience it at the disco end. Because currently our installed capacity is way more than what we're getting in the long run.
All right, thank you very much for that. Real quick, let's circle back and talk about the issue of high food prices. Now, we can tie this back to the issue that started small but that has grown into a big security challenge and has been a threat to the country's sustainability. There's conflict between herders and farmers. Now, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Event data, they say that Nigeria has lost no fewer than 8,343 persons to the conflict since 2005. Also, the report, which covered 2005 to mid-2021, puts the number of killings in Benue at 2,539 from 303 attacks, while Plateau, Kaduna, Taraba, Nasarawa lost 2,138, 1,188, 755, 521 lives. And it goes on and on, really. But real quick, I just want to ask this. In what ways would you say this administration could have nipped this in the bud? And also, would you say there's been some progress in resolving, some conflicts as far as, the Ruger settlement is concerned?
Well,
And,
Ruger,
and the anti-open grazing as well.
yes,
That's
anti-open grazing. The truth is, what was I wouldn't call it neglected, but how the way that we haven't properly managed the security issues in the country have led to so many other problems. And one of the biggest ones on the table, which is less referred to, is the food insecurity, whereby we're not able to meet our demands or our requirements in terms of food production. Now, as you can see, we've lost a lot of personnel. Okay, up to about 8,000 who would have been in the farms producing. And if you remember the case, I think that was in Yobe, or was it Borno, where rice farmers were slaughtered right in their fields because they did not, they had released some names to the military that was working on ground. Now, what this has done is directly, as with every economy, market forces will move. So when you have sustained demand, which is what we have as a country of 200 million mouths, and you don't have sufficient supply, what you're going to have is an increase in prices. So it's no surprise that food prices have skyrocketed for a long time now. Now, with I want to correct that. The media likes to put it as a conflict between herders and farmers, but it literally was an attack on herders on farmers. Okay. Well, there has been some political management of that whole saga, and unfortunately, we got to a level of the cattle farms that used to be beloved. They almost started looking like terrorists, and people started wondering how come the business of cattle rearing had become such a such such a complaint. However, the government has tried in different ways and manners to try and address this. Eventually, from moving from cattle colonies, they discussed the Ruga, which was turned down, and then eventually they introduced the National Livestock Plan, which was not only to address cattle but also other forms of livestock. How far they've gone on that in terms of ranching, I don't think they have gone so far. The issue hasn't properly been addressed in the long run. But basically, apart from cattle, in all ramifications from crop production to livestock production, Nigeria is not meeting the mark. Literally, we're producing 20% of what we eat. And what that means is that if you're only meeting up with 20%, the remaining 80 will come in one way or the other, which is where we have the huge importation bill, I think at around $15 billion, which the CBN had complained that we have to address this, which was why they came out with so many intervention schemes in rice, in maize, in poultry, in wheat and cassava. But with the failure of the Bank of Agriculture, that doesn't send such a strong signal as to the success of how Nigeria is addressing its food security bill. The good side is this: with the Africa Free Trade Agreement opportunity, it's an open invitation into business, and it's up to you as a nation to either create the required policies to ensure that you equip your own business people to be able to play a role in the agri sector, to be able to profit not only in terms of finance, but also to provide the required food for the nation so that we can all eat and get away from this
Thank
insecurity
you.
of being hungry.
Thank you, Devo. Gilbert Musa says, I want to disagree with Mr. Ugo Drake, who said he gives credit to CBN for several intervention funds to some sectors, including agriculture. Local farmers did not profit from their farms since January 2020 till date. Well, that may be arguable. We'll be back to talk more on security. This is Lagos Talk Special. I'm here with Kaya Baker.
And me, and our very special analyst, Oliver Drake, Justin EJ, Deborah Corey, and Mr. C.
Champagne or
What you say?
every break you serve a shot of champagne or
Are you sure
something.
we're going to finish it next time?
No, we can't finish all the questions. So let's see if we can
What's the
move
plan
ahead.
now?
Come, you don't reach me with that for Fash. Fash has not showed up in the
Go on
last
YouTube.
3, 4, 5
Go on
years. Are you
YouTube.
aware?
Yeah, what's that?
I'm saying it publicly.
What's that?
Fash has not showed up in 3 to 4 years. Don't they reach Fash, Joe? I beg. Hmm? As you know, give us champagne for this kind special gathering.
Don't worry, we promise the 2022 will be.
So we're coming in to ask what Mr. C thinks of
Security.
on security, and then we're moving straight to Justin for the health sector. Immediately after that, we're skipping number 9 and skipping number 10 as well.
We have 9.
Justin, just see if you can touch on
9
what you
minutes.
think of the health sector basically and what kind of we're in. Smooth 98.1. This is Lagos Talks 9.1. Kylie Baker is here.
And Olakun is here as well. And of course, we've got our very special analyst. Don't forget, you can be a part of our talk. You can send your messages down to us real quick. 0809444091. Our next story comes to Mr. C.
Yeah, let's get into it. We mentioned that we're going to continue with insecurity. Mr. C, in a recent interview, special advisor to the president, Femi Adesina, told media and publicity, that told journalists that 7 months is enough to turn insecurity around. You already know that we have kidnapping, we have Boko Haram, we have ISWAP, it's insane. It's a lot that we have dealt with in 2021 regarding insecurity. With these situations, which ends do you think that the government needs to tie against 2022 or in 2022?
Okay, like very quickly, there are a lot of things that need to be tactical. So it's not a question of only two. So I don't know why Mr. Additional would suggest 17 months was adequate to solve all these problems.
But is it enough?
It's clearly not enough because the problems are multifaceted. So why do we have all these incidents? For example, the headsmen, the conflicts, the kidnappings, the abductions, the terrorism, all have economic undertones and also point to the absence and the complete failure of state actors in certain parts of the country. Now we've had reports over the course of 2021 that in certain states like Borno, Katsina, you have a complete absence of state actors, and then non-state actors have come in to fill the vacuum. Because the truth of the matter is, in nature, the vacuum is abhorrent. There will always be something to fill the vacuum. So what does the government need to do to ensure that we have credible elections in 2023? There are lots. One, regarding these matters, IPOB, let me start with IPOB. You need to have a dialogue. It's not enough to prescribe a group. You can prescribe a group, you cannot prescribe an ideology, you cannot prescribe a belief. Now, whether the federal government likes it or not, the people in the Southeast have a belief, a reasonable belief that they have not been treated fairly. So it requires coming to the table to talk to them. Forget the fact that Nnamdi Kanu is a clown. Forget the fact that IPOB do not know what they're doing. I'm an Igbo man, but I don't believe they know what they're doing. But you need to sit down and talk with them and begin to redress some of these grievances and fault lines. Now, with regards to the abductions, the killings, now we need to have increased security from the security agencies. So we need to fund them better. We need to rely more on technology, because we keep on hearing reports of the abductors enter the forest and then they can't find them. For the love of everything good, we have drones with heat-seeking technology, heat-seeking capabilities that can detect mass bodies of heat in covered areas. Please use them. Now, beyond that, there can be no peace without justice. You must ensure that the law is enforced and that when people are being tried, the trials are speedy, they are fair, they are transparent. Our public officials too need to be transparent, they need to be accountable to the people, because all of these things combined together have led us to where we are. Finally, final point, the elections we conduct. We need to conduct credible elections that are seen to be free and fair, that even the losers will acknowledge they've been defeated. But in Nigeria, the problem is the elections are conducted in such a way that everyone is agreed, and then we then waste valuable time going through an electoral appeal process that takes forever, and even that process is, as a lawyer, is shortchanged because there isn't enough time. But these are some of the things they need to get right if we have any hope of conducting proper elections in 2023.
Thank you so much, Mr. C. Let's move on real quick to Justin. This one talks about the health sector. So Nigeria ranks third in the list of African countries with the highest cases of Omicron variants after South Africa and Botswana, with 1,296 and also 391 cases respectively. It goes deeper there, but we've also experienced the third and fourth wave of COVID-19 this year. How would you score our health sector on its management of the spread of COVID-19?
And of course, you can let us know what you think can be done, to better.
Yeah.
Okay. COVID has multi-sectoral impacts and implications. It's not just a health issue. COVID is also an economic issue. It's a logistic. It presents logistical challenges and all of that as well when you think about lockdown and the effect on the economy. So if we're going to look specifically at how the health sector has managed it, so we are then specifically talking about things like how many people were we able to vaccinate, right? How many people have taken the double dose of the vaccine and stuff like that is specific to the health sector. So Reuters, the news agency, has a data aggregation site which pulls data together. The data regarding Nigeria is pulled from Federal Ministry of Health. Okay. So we can safely say that their data source is complete. So the best way to answer this question is to look at what they've said about how we've fared. So there have been 238,000 infections and 3,000 coronavirus deaths recorded. I'm rounding up the figures, by the way.
Okay.
Since the pandemic began, 238,000 infections, 3,000 deaths. And when you look at the number of people that have been vaccinated, we have 13.5 million people vaccinated. That's 3.5% of our population.
And they're talking now about booster shots. So
They're talking about
how,
booster shots.
how can we bridge this gap real quick?
Hold on. 156,000 people are being vaccinated daily. At that rate, we will need 257 days to do 10% of our population. Now,
Wait, rephrase that again.
currently, we are vaccinating 156,000 people daily. Now, this is double shots. I'm not counting boosters. Okay. Today, Nigeria is vaccinating 156,000 people daily. At that daily rate, it will take us 257 days. That's slightly short of another year
Okay.
to vaccinate 10% of our population. Now, there are countries that have done 96%, 90% and above
So in what you're
vaccination
trying to say in
coverage.
essence is we should do more than we're already doing.
We are failing tremendously, and this thing is mutating fast.
All right. Thank you so much, Justin. Let's take that message before we move to the next one.
This one says the 48,000 megawatts being generated by South Africa is largely consumed and driven by the industrial/manufacturing sector, while industrial off-takers in Nigeria complain about the current tariffs as being too high. Effectively, who will uptake any increased generation in Nigeria? And this is from El Como.
All right. So what we're going to do now is that each analyst will tell us the sector that looks most promising. Just one. So you're going to just state one sector that looks most promising for 2022, and then you follow up with your recommendations to citizens.
Of course, we know what Ugodo is going to talk
Now, we have already made a lot of recommendations to the government. So let's talk about the citizens. Just quickly, a few seconds each.
Let's start with Justin, since you already have the mic with you.
Let's go.
Mr. C has a
Or
mic
Mr. C,
too.
would you like to go first?
I defer to you, Mr. C.
Okay, guys. So for me, I think the sector that holds the most promise and the most potential is the power sector, and I'll explain.
No, don't explain. Just tell us power sector, then tell us your recommendations for
So
2022 for citizens.
my recommendations for the power sector in 2022 is that the government should offer tax breaks, offer incentives to investors who are willing to come in, and beyond that, make concessions for them at the forex window so that they can bring in and take out capital at will. And once those investments are in, I assure you, power supply will go up and the nation will be a lot better and the consumers will be very happy.
Ugo Dre.
You sure I won't go last because there are plenty here. Don't rush me.
Ugo, come on, we're out of time.
We're out of time.
So if you're in Nigeria, look out for the sectors: telecoms, power, oil and gas, trade, transportation. I think there's going to be a lot of GDP growth in those sectors. If you're an investor, look in those directions. If you're looking to start a business, look in that direction. GDP growth in numbers there are in double digits, and I think it's going to persist this year. Thank you very much.
Justin.
Gas, specifically for me. Ugo mentioned it, but gas is one area where there's a lot. We've seen the increase in gas prices. That's mainly because there's a huge gap. So that gap needs to be addressed. And I happen to know that a lot of players are already gearing up to
Invest in
jump
that
into the
space.
fray. Yeah. So
All
I
right.
think there's a lot that's going to happen. Assuming ease of business remains ease of business.
Okay, Devo.
Promising for me, I think I'll be looking at the tech and entertainment sector because of its capacity and growing
Ajapari.
rate
True,
at
true.
galvanizing our youth, which represent, remember, 75% of our population, which is upwards of 100 million individuals. So if you can gather those people to do anything positive and productive, you're going in the right direction.
All right.
Thank you so much,
This
gentlemen.
has been good, right?
It's been a very, very, very robust and fun and informative and educative show. But you know what? You can keep in touch with our analyst up on social media across all platforms. Let's start off with Mr. C. It's at Monsieur C with the triple C. Yes,
Yes. I
on
want to
social
see.
media.
Yes, and Devo Okorie is Devo Okorie on social media. Justin is Justin.ej on social media. Ugo Dre, everywhere. You can find him anywhere. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you so much, guys.
For giving us
Have a
your
nice
time.
one.
And for everyone who joined the conversation, thank you for joining the conversation. This has been a really good conversation. Go on YouTube and watch the video again if you missed it. And of course, you can communicate with us via Facebook. You can communicate with us via Instagram and anywhere else. We're at Smooth981. I am Lakumi.
I'm Kaidi Baker. In a few more seconds, it's going to be time for Locker Room 981. So please stay with us.
Merci beaucoup. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank
Have
you
a nice
so
one.
much.
Thank
You guys
you.
are excellent.
Yep.
Thank you
It
so
was
much.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Let's do this next year if you're here.
Hugo, you're coming tomorrow.
We'll say see you next year.
Don't mind him.
Thank you so much.
Because they play my kind of music. Love music, love life.
Any other sectors that he mentioned?
Yeah,
Let's go and borrow money and start investing.
I'm
in these
telling you.
sectors. That's part of it. I'm going to go and download the video again and watch it.
Yes, we're still live, I think.
Oh, wow.
No, but that's a good thing to say.